Ladies and gentlemen, capital G here, showing off Grakmaw, Skyclave Ravager. Going back to Zendikar Rising for this particular deck tech. And let's see if I can fire it off before my daughter wakes up, shall we? So we're not going to waste any time here. You're going to see a clear theme develop very quickly with Grakmaw. Let's start by talking about our commander itself. We're looking at Golgari, green, black, and a generic mana. 0/0 base power and toughness for this Hydra horror. It enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters. And whenever another creature we control dies, if it had a 1/1 counter on it, put a 1/1 counter on Grakmaw. Okay. And whenever this dies, you get an XX black and green Hydra creature token, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on Grakmaw. Now remember, thanks to recent rules changes earlier this year, if Grakmaw dies, he hits the graveyard briefly before we have the option of returning it to the command zone. Therefore, regardless of whether or not Grakmaw stays in your graveyard or ends up in the command zone, this will trigger the die's ability and give us that token. So before we dive into the theme, just a quick look at our artifacts. I've got a Heraldic Banner here for a little bit of Anthem effect. We're likely actually going to choose green here. Also going to run the Ronus' Monument to reduce the cost of green creatures. This also says that whenever we cast a creature spell, a creature we control gets +2/+2 trample, so a little bit of offense there. Assault Ring, running the Great Henge. Good synergy with this deck. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, it gets a 1/1 counter, and we draw a card. So eventually, when that creature dies, it can move that 1/1 counter onto Grakmaw. And of course, the Ozolith, which is the All-Star. Anytime a creature leaves the battlefield, if it had counters, those counters end up on the Ozolith. And then on beginning of our combat step, we can move those counters onto a creature. So now into the theme of the deck. Almost all of the creatures that are in this deck leave behind a token when it dies. So this is not a super powerful ability. Don't try bringing this one to a EDH table, for example. This is good battle cruiser level stuff. So let's dive into this actually very resilient deck. So we've got Blisterpod, a 1/1 Eldrazi drone for a green. And when this dies, it leaves behind a 1/1 Scion that can be sacked for mana. The Cavalier of Night, it's a 4/5 with lifelink. And when this enters the battlefield, we get to sacrifice another creature to destroy a creature an opponent controls. And when this dies, we get to return a creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So even though it doesn't leave a token behind, it can bring back something of ours. Debtor's Transport leaves behind 2 spirits when this dies. Afterlife 2. The Demon's Disciple. When this enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. So a little bit of removal there with this creature. The Exquisite Huntmaster. It's a 4/2 from Commander Legends. When this dies, we get an Elf Warrior creature token, just a 1/1. And using the Encore, you get a copy of Exquisite Huntmaster in the graveyard. We can pay the Encore, get 3 of these, basically, 1 for each of our opponents, turn sideways, and then get the tokens. Eye Blight Colors. When this dies, we get 3 Elf Warrior creature tokens, then we mill 3 cards. Hangerback Walker, which recently got a Mechagodzilla promo, apparently. It's here because, hey, it's XX, so we pay mana. So every 2 mana, it's 1+1/+1 counter on it when we cast him. We can pay 1 and tap to add more counters, and when this dies, we get Thopters, equal to the number of 1/1 counters. Hooded Hydra. We can either pay green X, or we can play it face down and morph it. Either way, when this dies, we get a 1/1 green snake token for each 1/1 counter on the Hooded Hydra. Ivory Lane Dissident. Whenever another green creature enters the battlefield, it gets a 1/1 counter. Liliana's Devotee. It's a zombie synergy. We don't have too much of that here. But it says that at the beginning of our end step, if a creature died, so on our end step, if a creature died, it could be ours or one of our opponents, we can pay 2 mana to get a 2/2 zombie token. Miara, Thorn of the Glade. We have a few elves, so we might be able to synergize here. Whenever she or another elf we control dies, we can pay a mana and a life to draw a card. Atomic Slime. This is interesting stuff. 5 mana for this 4/4. When this dies, we get 2 green ooze tokens, 2/2s. And when those tokens die, we get 1/1 ooze tokens. So, fun stuff there. Nadir's Nightblade. Whenever a token we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So a little bit of aristocrat strategy there. We've got Nadir. I have it in as it's Spanish or Italian. I think it's Spanish. Looks Spanish to me. Whenever a token we control leaves the battlefield, I'm reading it from down here, he gets a 1/1 counter. And then when he leaves the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 tokens equal to its power. Running the Orzhov Enforcer. It's a Death Touch creature that gives us a spirit when it dies. Orzhov Racketeers. It's a 3/2, a little expensive at 5 mana. But if he manages to deal combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. And it can also leave behind 2 spirits. The Pawn of Ulamog. Whenever this or another non-token creature we control dies, we get a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn. Those spawns can be sacrificed for colorless mana. Penumbra Bobcat. When this dies, create a 2/1 black cat creature token. Penumbra Kavu. It's a 3/3 for 5 mana that leaves behind a 3/3 black Kavu token. Penumbra Spider. Leaves behind a 2/4 spider when this dies. Penumbra Worm. Same deal except a 6/6 Worm with Trample. Phyrexian Triniform. Really spicy stuff here. This dies, we get 3 golems. 3/3 golems. And then we can encore if we manage to get to 12 mana and encore this. We're gonna have an army of golems when it's all said and done. The Phyto Titan. It's a 7/2 for 6 mana, and whenever this dies, it just comes right back onto the battlefield at the beginning of the next upkeep. Seed Guardian. When this dies, we get an XX green elemental creature token, where X is the number of creature cards in our graveyard. I'm expecting we'll have plenty. Sifter of Skulls. Whenever another non-token creature dies, we get a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion. Those can be traded in for mana. Running the Symbiotic creatures. So Symbiotic Beast, it's a 4/4 for 6 mana. And when this dies, we get 4 1/1 insects. Symbiotic Elf, same deal, 2 1/1 insects when this dies. The Symbiotic Worm, 8 mana 7/7, but this dies, we get 7 insects. The Tukatung Thallid. This here says that whenever this dies, we get a 1/1 Saproling. The World Spine Worm, 11 mana for this 15/15 trample, big ol' beater. And whenever this dies, we get 3 5/5 green worm tokens with trample. Got the Worm Coil Engine, 6/6 Death Touch and Lifelink. This one's more of a staple. So when this dies, we get 2 3/3 colorless worm tokens, one with Lifelink and one with Death Touch. And the Xanthid Necromancer. Whenever this or another human we control dies, we get a 2/2 zombie. We don't have any other humans, so be it. Going on to enchantments. The nice thing about having all those creatures that leave behind tokens when they die, again, not a super strong strategy, but as boards build up and the board wipes start coming, well, we're still going to have creatures whereas everyone else's will be dead. So we get to swing in and deal a lot of damage. So running the Death Pit Offering is an Anthem effect. Even if we haven't had the board wipe yet, we can drop this down. All our creatures die, leave behind tokens with the buff. This is a good place to run the doubling season to double up on both +1/+1 counters as well as tokens. Golgari Germination. This will leave additional tokens behind whenever our non-token creatures die. In this case, a 1/1 green Saproling. Kaz Ghost Form. We can throw this onto one of our creatures. It dies, it comes back, and we still have the token. Open the Graves, similar to Golgari Germination, except in this case it's a 2/2 black zombie that we get. Ordeal of Nylea. This is an interesting piece of ramp once we have our commander on the battlefield. Our commander comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters already, so Enchant it with the Ordeal, turn sideways, get 2 basic lands. Primal Vigor is here, same reason as Doubling Season. Double up on tokens, double up on 1/1 counters. Unholy Indenture. Similar to Kai's Ghost form. When enchanted creature dies, it comes back to the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. We don't have to enchant our creatures with this. We could enchant an opponent's creatures as well. And also, Seb McKinnon. Just Seb McKinnon. Going on to instants, Grim Return. Choose a creature card and a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield. It comes into play under our control. Once again, it can be one of our creatures. It can be an opponent's creature if need be. Malakir Rebirth. This can be played as a land, or we can have one of our creatures basically come right back to the battlefield when it dies. Return of the Wildspeaker. Excellent card draw here. All but one of our creatures are non-human, so we can draw a bunch of cards equal to the greatest power amongst our non-humans, or we can get the 3/3, the +3/+3 effect on our entire board. Return to Nature, just to knock out an artifact, an enchantment, or card in the graveyard. And Roiling Regrowth, sack a land, get 2. Village Rites. 1 black, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. And of course, we still get the token. Moving on to lands, we've got Castle Garenbrig. Just to ramp us up a little bit, there's no real consequence to running it otherwise. Same with Castle Locthwain. In this case, it gives us some card draw from our lands. A Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Fabled Passage, the usual stuff. Field of the Dead is here as well. Running 9 forests. We have a Gingerbread Cabin, which may give us the food token if we have 3 or more forests. Running the Llanowar Wastes. Overgrown Tomb, the Shockland. Randomly a snow-covered forest. That might have been a holdover from when I was building, but it's still good here. Running 9 swamps, a Terramorphic Expanse. The newly printed Undergrowth Stadium. Verdant Catacombs, between the Zendikar reprint and the fact that it's coming up again in Modern Horizons 2 this coming year. I figure it's worth running because more and more copies are coming into circulation. War Room. This lets us pay 3 mana and in our case 2 life, as our commander has a 2-color identity. So 3 mana, 2 life, draw a card. If we need to dump our mana somewhere, this is where it goes. Witch's Cottage lets us get a creature from our graveyard back on top of our library. The Woodland Cemetery. And that gives us our lands. Only 34, but we do have a couple of spells that we can play as lands if we need to. Such as Bala Ged Recovery. Return a creature card, or any card actually, from our graveyard to our hand, or we can play it as a land. Blood for Bones, going into M20 uncommons for this one. So we pay 4 mana, we sacrifice a creature, and we get to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, then another creature from our graveyard to our hand. Since this doesn't target, we can actually bring back in one fashion or another the creature we sacrifice. So I thought this was a little spicy. Command the Dread Horde. Just get a bunch of everyone's creatures. This is not a very high power level deck, so we do need some back pocket aces, and this is one of them. Damnation, showing off the Invocation printing. But regardless of the printing, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. Hey, all our creatures die and leave behind tokens. It's very one-sided. Dread Return lets us bring a creature back from our graveyard to the battlefield, and the flashback, sacrifice 3 creatures. Sure, why not sacrifice 3? Get another one back. Feed the Swarm, of course, from Zendikar Rising. New staple in black, destroying a creature or an enchantment. Grove Spasm gives us a little Eldrazi spawn as well as a basic land from our deck. Life's Legacy. As an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, and we draw a card equal to the sacrificed creature's power. Primal Growth is here to get us 1 land, maybe 2, if we sacrifice a creature. Reanimate. Hey, we want our dead creatures to come back and leave behind more tokens eventually, so there we go. Search for Tomorrow, just some efficient ramp as well, especially if you manage to cast it turn 1. Spark Harvest, so we can pay the extra 4 mana, or we can sacrifice a creature to destroy a creature or planeswalker. Toxic Deluge, yeah, give the board -X/-X, and then we get our token army running. And Victimize, sacrifice a creature, get 2 back. So that's my take on Grakmaw. Again, this is Battlecruiser stuff. Don't take it to more competitive tables. But we've got some fun cards and interesting interactions here. And I think this will be a fun one to play. I'm going to give it a shot soon. In the meantime, it is Wednesday afternoon, so enjoy the rest of your week. I'll try to sneak in at least one more of these deck techs before Christmas. Going to look at some Commander Legend stuff. Not sure which Commander is next, but as soon as I know, you'll know. And on that, I'm going to wish everyone goodbye, and we'll see you all next time.